to say it. Somebody should. Let's talk about two time. Let's talk about bum wine, yeah. You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where the bone thugs and are they in harmony? Help for Snowman.
Well, hey everybody, welcome. Welcome. We've got another episode that's kind of a book review. Kind of a book review. We did 2 book review episodes, and now we've already sort of slid downhill into a kind of a book review. and you know, that's also, let's keep in mind, those first 2 episodes, I'm counting those as a full-on book review. And so, you know, and spent 90% of the time talking about my butthole. So, you know, see past episodes for that, Smile and Stan. So today's book is NPR's podcast Startup Guide, which is, I guess, by Glenn Weldon, but, you know, has a bunch of different people in it. And basically, let's look at the blurb on the back. So you want to start a podcast. Whoever you are, whatever you love, there's a podcast audience waiting for you. And in today's booming audio storytelling landscape, it's never been easier to share your voice with the world. But while the barrier to entry for podcast production is relatively low, just the cost of a mic and a laptop, the learning curve is steep and quality matters. That's where NPR comes in. Now, I want to be nice to NPR on a level because I feel like they've been unfairly maligned and, you know, defunded and stuff. And that sucks. That sucks butts. But I guess, you know, spoiler for how I feel about this book in general. I feel like this is a book that tells you how to NPR or podcast the NPR way, which is its own thing. I made a lot of notes, sticky notes. You know what I mean? You know what a sticky note is? But like, I just put stickies and things in this book that I thought were important. And I wanted to start with Chapter 1. Wait, what is a podcast? Which, come on. Like, why would I pick up a book called NPR's Podcast Startup Guide if I was like, I don't even know what a podcast is? You know what I mean? And it's like, podcasts are an on-demand, on-the-go medium ideally suited to the speed of now, allowing us to absorb information, insight, and or diversion through our ears while we do other things. You know, and it's like, this is a pet peeve of mine with all nonfiction, almost all nonfiction, all non-narrative nonfiction. When I pick up a book, I have a review on Goodreads that's been fairly popular, and it's like a book about like becoming happiness and finding joy in your life again or something. And the review is basically like, why the fuck is this book, does it start with, what is happiness? You know what I mean? And I'm like, fuck off. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to have to learn about what happiness is. That kind of thing. Or like, if you ever read a book of like business advice, you know, one of those, who's that guy who he wrote the Nintendo Worlds of Power books under like an assumed name. And he wrote like, he writes a fuck ton of those pop business books, the Icarus Effect or something like that. You know, Seth Godin. Did you know that? I'm pretty sure that guy wrote a bunch of novels about like kids getting sucked into the TV and being in Nintendo. Stay tuned for another episode. I'm sure eventually we'll get to that. I mean, there is actually, you know, books are kind of an infinite thing, which I guess is part of what makes them good for podcast fodder. But I don't know if they're so infinite that it's like, well, eventually, you know what I mean? Are they so infinite that we'll never get to a Worlds of Power book? Or does it just seem like the book world is infinite, but it's like, okay, there's always new books coming out, but like, what % of them would you actually want to read? Anyway, it drives me fucking crazy because then he'll talk about like marketing, right? And he'll have a book about like, here, you need to change your marketing scheme. And then it's like, what is marketing? And then it always is like, well, the cavemen did this and that. And I'm like, I don't care about that. I don't care. I tried twice to do the audiobook of how to be an anti-racist, and I couldn't make it either time because it felt like being in a really boring college class. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy is a college professor. That makes sense. He is used to people listening to him because he controls their grades. It just wasn't very interesting, I guess, and it's like, it's not that the subject matter was boring or bad. It's like, but here's the thing. I don't need to start with a definition of everything. You know what I mean? We don't need to talk about, I don't need to know how the ancient Egyptians were racist. You know what I mean? Like that, I don't think that's really relevant. I mean, we could talk about that, but like, are other books like this, are other fields, which fields don't do this? Like if I take, I don't know, a class about farming, do I have to learn the incorrect way that the ancient Egyptians did it? You know what I mean? It's like, well, they believed that by worshiping Ra, they would have enough sunshine, and by worshiping whoever, they would have rain. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that's interesting just as a fact, but like, I don't think that's going to help me very much. For me, it's like, I think if I ever wrote a book like this, you know what I mean? I think the most likely book I would write, well, let's say we were doing Pete's podcast startup guide as an alternative to NPR's podcast startup guide. That's basically what this episode's going to be, right? I wouldn't bother defining podcast at most. And I probably wouldn't even do this, but at most, I would have like a 1-page opening chapter that's like, usually this is where a book would define what a podcast is and, how it works and so on and so forth, just so that we're all on the same page here. But I'm not going to bother with that because I'm going to assume that you picking this up was because you at least are pretty sure about what a podcast is. Like you have some idea. So I don't think we need to go through it. I don't think we need to. I think we could just move right into the advice portion of this whole thing. You know what I mean? Just starting to talk to you about how to get it going. My next disagreement with NPR's podcast startup guide is question 1. Who is it for? A podcast needs a reason for being. For most podcasters, that's probably being heard by someone else. That starts with identifying your audience. So grab your notebook or open your podcast planning file on your computer, and here we go. I guess for me, it's like, I don't really believe in that. Like, I don't think you need to have an audience for something to do a thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, I sort of get it. Like the podcast world is much like the self-pub author world, right? Like there's a lot of fucking garbage. And it maybe those of us who write that garbage are doing the others a disservice because it's like, well, they have to paw through the landfill that we've created in order to find the few good things that exist in there. But at the same time, I feel pretty strongly that like, I don't think you should do something because you think other people are going to like it, because most of the time they aren't. It's the fucking internet, right? If you're banking on other people liking something that you did on the internet, that's a stupid way to live your life. You are going to be unhappy. I guarantee that you will be unhappy. You're going to hate the way you feel. I guarantee it. And I say that as the internet, as not just someone who pays for it, but also as a customer. There's a very tortured version of the Men's Warehouse commercial that probably nobody remembers, where the Men's Warehouse guy is like, I'm not just the CEO, I'm also a customer, or something like that. Is that the Men's Warehouse? Or am I confusing that with some other loser who was like banking on me being like, well, if he shops there, you know what I mean? It's a little like that McDonald's made that video and their like CEO was eating that burger and he barely took a bite of it and whatever. And he just seemed like the most stiff corporate loser that you're like, I mean, that's fine. Here's the thing. That's fine because like that is kind of who you want to be your CEO, right? You don't really necessarily need your CEO to be Mr. Flashy Pants. You just need him to, do bullshit that makes a company work. But like, and I kind of don't care if he's relatable. It's fine if he's a robot. You know what I mean? That's always like, I remember, when Hillary Clinton was running for president and people would be like, I don't know, she's kind of a bitch. And I was like, fine. I don't care. I don't care if, I don't have to work with her. And it's not like she's really, coming after me or whatever. She's not getting after me to like fold my laundry or something. Like she's dealing with other countries. And I'm like, I don't know. I think there's certain things where it's like, well, if I'm picking an attorney, maybe I would want someone who's actually kind of a bitch. Like that seems like a benefit. You know what I mean? That seems like a good thing to be in certain positions. Anyway, when I went to Tom Spanbauer's workshop, he always said this thing and it was like, I'll kind of butcher it, but it was basically like, don't write because you want a girl to fall in love with you, or you want your dad to love you, or you want respect, or you want this or that. Basically what he was saying is like, if you're writing in order to get something out of the world or out of people, don't bother. Like this is the long way around. It's not going to work. So don't do it. The only reason to do it is because you want to do it. And I kind of think the same applies to podcasting, which is like, yeah, do it because you want to do it, but not for any other reason. Here's a note from the pros that says, do your homework by Liana Simstrom, who's the podcast manager of Invisibilia. Liana says, this seems really obvious, but there are a lot of podcasts that already exist. Aspiring podcasters should probably take a look at the landscape of what's out there. Everybody is making a podcast right now. What are you adding to the space? I disagree with that. I mostly disagree with that as well, because I feel like that's like saying, lots of people paint, so you shouldn't paint. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't really make any sense to me. I think that's kind of the whole point. Also, I feel, and I'm not trying to get on my high horse too high right now, but I'm just like, I think this is kind of the whole point of podcasting is that like, yeah, NPR doesn't get to make the rules anymore. You know what I mean? And other people can do whatever they want. And like, I listen to more than one, bad movie podcast because I enjoy them. Or, I listen to more than one chat show of people screwing around and just talking about nothing in particular. And that's fine. I don't think you have to have a hook, or like you don't have to have a big theme or something like that. You don't have to. I mean, it probably helps. It makes it easier. Because like when people are like, what is Helpful Snowman about? I mean, now I'm like, oh, it's a kind of a book review podcast. And I weave in stories about my own life. By weave in, I mean slap on top of. Like when you go to Culver's and they put a pickle on top of the burger for some reason. But yeah, because I believe, reading is part of our lives, and where we are in our lives kind of affects how we feel about the book. This is the bullshit I could say. The truth is, I'm just like, I don't know. I just came up with this idea based on a book. And because I kind of wanted to yell at the person who wrote that book for no real reason. So anyway, I don't think you need to like look into what other people are doing necessarily. I mean, and plus you're probably aware, right? You're probably aware if it's like, I got an idea. We're going to talk about baseball. And it's like, well, yeah, of course there are other podcasts. But sometimes I think this whole thing is like so much preparation. There's that part in Spaceballs where Dark Helmet is like, you guys are always preparing. It's prepare this, prepare that. Just go. And then the guy's like, okay, just go. And they just go. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I think making things like a podcast, it's like, well, I think you kind of have to make it and then feel it out as you go a little bit. Most podcasts too, like if you like them and then they're 200 episodes in, you go back to episode 1 and you're like, this is fucking terrible. And I think that's more the rule than the exception to the rule. So like, maybe don't worry about it so much. Here we've got a listing. The usual suspects, podcast team members. There are 8 people listed here, or 8 roles. There's editor, beats the podcast structure and story into shape. Now this is very revealing for me of like, the NPR style is very much like highly produced stories, highly written, highly produced, not just like a chat. The closest thing I think they have to like a chat is an interview where you don't necessarily know what the other person's going to say. But I mean, the interview will still have a structure for the most part. And it's just occasionally, I guess you'll get a surprise, good or bad, about where it goes. But, and I think that's why a lot of times you hear a lot of the same kinds of people on NPR, because it's like, well, they're good guests, but I think they're good guests in the sense that like they work for NPR's style. Producer handles, oversees audio production, technical editing, sound design, mixing, may also edit, plus possibly many other tasks. Host creates and delivers the story. Sound designer develops, obtains, and or creates the sounds needed to make the story effective. See, this is another thing I guess they do, which is like, if you're interviewing people in the park and it's like, well, we better capture some background park ambient noise so that we can lay that in where we want to and so on. Whereas like for me, I'm like, I would prefer none other noise than my voice. This is a vanity project, if there ever was one. And so why would I want to capture anything but me? The mixer fine-tunes the audio quality. The engineer does the final polish. The composer writes original music or licenses existing music for podcast theme and or for individual episodes. And then there's the art/logo designer who creates the podcast artwork. I just want to point out that you don't need 8 people for that. I mean, you make the podcast artwork one time. And if you don't know how to do it, like hire someone on Fiverr to do it. You know what I mean? Just make some shit. It's not that hard. You could do it. I did it in MS Paint. I feel it gives my show a appropriate charm, by which I mean it looks like shit. So when you listen to this, I think the subversive idea, what I would say initially is like, well, it looks like shit. So then when it sounds like shit, you're not surprised. But actually what I would say is like, I think the sound of the show is better than the visual of the show. So maybe you're pleasantly surprised. Nothing works better than surprise. There's a whole section about co-hosts, and you're supposed to ask yourself these questions. Think about or write your answers to the questions below when considering co-hosts. What aspects of podcasting do you think you're likely to be good at or know from experience you are good at? I mean, I wouldn't say I'm good at any of it, but, well, okay. I have to say I'm good at something. I would say stick-to-itiveness, a perfectly cromulent word. I just keep going. I don't know why. It's like I'm like a Wall-E robot on that trash planet that's just been left behind, and it just continues making garbage cubes, and it doesn't really know why, and it doesn't know what's going on. I'm like Wall-E, but if Wall-E had no personality, like he was just a husk of a robot who just did what he was supposed to do and just kept doing it. That's kind of how I am. That's what I'm pitching as my strength, I guess. I don't know how to quit, but I think that sounds too complimentary. I don't know when to say quit. It's like, something that would be really good in a football movie and something that would maybe be not as good in a movie where a guy is trying to get a girl to date him. And that's a very different context for someone being like, he doesn't know when to take no for an answer. What aspects do you need to improve or learn more about? I don't think anything. I mean, I think I could learn more. I could do more like storytelling or something, but I just don't think I would enjoy that. So I'm not going to. Of the latter, which are you most interested to learn? So what of the things am I most interested to learn that I don't know? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know where this is going. What areas are you most knowledgeable about? What specifically, nay, uniquely, are you bringing to the table? I mean, I think NPR would say this and not really mean it, but it's like, I think everybody at least has some stories to them, some ideas and like some things to say. I think that there's a weird thing in the world of podcasting, in my opinion, because there's like This American Life. And I think the premise there is like, everyone's got at least one good story, which I'm like, that's true. I think that's probably true. But the only way to make that story listenable is like, you got to have somebody, you got to have those 8 people doing all 8 of those tasks with that person in order to make that work. In other words, like, I mean, sometimes there are people who have amazing stories, but their ability to tell those stories is not very good. And so like, but then you have the other side of podcasting, I think, which is like, people see Joe Rogan and they're like, he just like sits around and smokes a cigar and just talks to some guy. You know what I mean? And it's like, I could do that, which you can. You know what I mean? I cannot really describe why Joe Rogan is popular. I mean, I know a lot of people have ideas and theories, but he's a little bit like a manosphere Kim Kardashian, where it's like, I can't really explain why his podcast is like as big as it is. There's no like logical, this happened, then this happened in my estimation. Anyway, so I don't know. On one hand, I think it's like, you being a unique individual, you bring something to the table. But on the other hand, you gotta bring it with some energy, for God's sake. It's a little bit like I talked about a couple times ago. We watched the show Love is Blind, right? And I was talking about how I just hate because there's like no uggos on that show. And I'm like, well, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, you're on Love is Blind and you're going to end up with someone who you've never seen before. But on the other hand, you're like, but I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to be like a 7.5 out of 10 or higher. So there's no risk there. You know what I mean? Or there's no like, it's not really going with the premise of the show to be like, maybe if I stopped paying as much attention to the physical and got to know someone, I would love someone who I wouldn't otherwise be interested in. But here's the other thing that I think makes that show not work. Like, all the people on that show are so fucking bland and boring. Like, the best thing on the show is when there's someone horrible on it. You know what I mean? Like, a horrible human being is the only thing that ever makes that show interesting, because it's, at least they have some kind of a personality. Now, I'm not saying that makes that a good person or that you would want to date that person. I'm just saying it's unwatchable because you're like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, this guy's a college professor. This lady's a social worker. They're adults. They're in their early 30s. They live in like adult apartments where they have like dishes and laundry and a wardrobe of some kind. And yeah, that's great. And you're like, that's fine. I'm happy for them. I actually don't give a shit for them, but I don't wish them unwell. I just feel like I don't really want to invest a whole lot of time watching those two people fall in love. It's just not very interesting to me. Do you like slow and steady progress, or do you tend to procrastinate but then work well under deadline pressure? Oh, I'm kind of neither. I mean, I like the idea of slow and steady progress. And I think in my mind, I think that's the key to do everything. You know what I mean? Like, I think anyone on earth could learn like a language if they studied like 3 times a day for 15 minutes. I bet you would learn a fuck ton in a year. But that's like the hardest thing in the world to do, right? It's like, it's much easier if I could just learn for an hour once a week instead of, 15 minutes spread out throughout the day or something like that. But at the same time, I think anyone who thinks they work well under deadline pressure is lying to themselves. Because I think most people who think that, it's like, well, is that the only way you've ever done anything? You know what I mean? Like, students, I think this is like a student thing, right? Oftentimes. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I know you think that, but I think that you think that because that's just how you've always done it. And I know that's not the way. It doesn't work. So I'm neither, which is good and bad. Like, I don't procrastinate till the absolute deadline, but I do have a hard time making slow and steady progress. So I'm bad in both ways. Do you like pitching ideas, asking for help, and getting others on board with plans? Or are you into working more behind the scenes? Why are those the two choices? Like, why do I have to get other people on board? That's, I think, another thing that, like, I don't like about, all this NPR stuff in this book is like, I don't think you have to get a bunch of people on board. Like, I think there's something to be said for doing a thing that's uniquely you. And like, that's probably more interesting. Something super weird. Like, I think the upside of there being a huge pile of garbage that you have to sort through, but the upside is like, there's a lot of different stuff out there to different tastes. You know what I mean? Like, you might not be someone's taste, but you might be someone else's taste. Taste. Why does that seem so gross now? There's a whole long section about basically learning to control your voice and stuff like that. And like being okay with what your voice sounds like, but also trying to get rid of things like vocal fry, stuff like that, up talking, whatever. And I don't know. I kind of think that that's bullshit too. Like, I think part of the good thing of podcasting is that you can hear from different people with different kinds of voices that you wouldn't hear on the radio. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't really make a lot of sense. If you're hiring a broadcaster, here's the thing. In the radio days, you would have Uncle Nasty on 106.7 KBPI. And the reason you have him is because you're a station manager and you're like, well, when we're doing ads for XYZ, who do I want? What voice do I want to do that? You know what I mean? And it's like, well, when I think of metal, I think of Uncle Nasty. You know what I mean? But like, it doesn't have to be that way. And that was just something that someone along the line decided, like, this kind of thing should be like this. And it's like, well, why couldn't you have a podcast about metal music where the host is kind of soft-spoken, but knows a lot about metal and, and up talks like this, and so on. And it's like, yeah, I think that's fine. I don't know if the person knows their shit and is worth listening to. I don't think it really fucking matters what their voice sounds like. So I'm a little bit like, I don't know, fuck off with that shit. I just don't think it's important. And literally every person is like, oh no, I hate how my voice sounds. And then, you record them and you listen back to it and they're like, oh, is that what my voice sounds like? And you're like, no, but the truth is, yeah, that's what your voice sounds. That's what everyone's voice sounds like, their recorded voice. It's just time to get over it. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, we've invented, you know what I mean? Some asshole way back when invented the mirror. And then everyone was like, holy shit, is that what I look like? You know what I mean? And for some people, it was, I have to imagine maybe like somebody out there was pleasantly surprised. They saw themselves in the mirror for the first time And they're like, okay. Yeah, that'll work. But I gotta imagine most people probably were like, okay. You know what I mean? That's not great. I bet they had a saying back in the day that was kind of like along the lines of, the camera puts on 10 pounds or whatever, which is probably not true, right? But we just say that. I bet they had a saying like that for the mirror. The mirror makes you much uglier. You didn't have to make as good of sayings back in the day. You could just come up with some shit because there weren't all these great sayings. You know what I mean? You weren't in competition. But I don't know, man. Just like get used to it. And it's like, okay, yeah, the podcast or the video or whatever is like our 21st century version of the mirror came out, and it's like, oh, fuck. Or like whenever I saw myself on video, like especially when I was a kid or whatever, I was like, that's what I look like. I look so stupid. You know what I mean? But I think part of the problem too is like you're a kid and you're watching yourself on a video and then, but what you're used to seeing on TV is like movie stars. And you're like, well, I don't look like a movie star. It's like, well, yeah, you don't look like Arnold in Terminator 2. That's true. You're a child. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. Why compare yourself that way? Don't worry about it. If you think your voice sounds dumb, it's just because you're used to hearing the voices of like audiobook narrators. And then you're like, oh, okay. You don't need to sound like an audiobook narrator. It's fine. Let's see. Notes from the pros. Key questions to ask about your story. This is from J.C. Howard, who's producer of TED Radio Hour, and how I built this guy Raz. This guy with Raz. How I built this with Guy Raz. I'm blaming the name Guy Raz, R-A-Z. Maybe it's Guy Ra or something. But like, how I built this guy, Raz. It's like, that's a weird name for an NPR show. Or how I built this. Okay. Guy Raz, I assume, is the co-host who J.C. Howard found by asking all those questions. Does my work do justice to the story? I think I've done more than enough justice to my stories of my personal grievances and my butt. You know what I mean? I think I'm doing a solid job, unlike my defecations, of explaining the story. Yeah, I think I've covered the bases. 2, does my work make that story clear to the audience? I think it's pretty clear. Yeah. I think that, the story of Helpful Snowman over the years, I don't think there's a lack of clarity here. 3, does it include the fun bits? Oh, man. There may be parts that you just love. Those are the things that make the story worth telling. I don't think I would tell a story that didn't have any fun bits, with a few exceptions of, decidedly unfun stories. But I think for me, it's like, if I'm not ready to laugh about it a little bit, I'm probably not ready to talk about it. And, so it's like, you probably shouldn't do a podcast about that. I don't know. Just look up the episode descriptions of the show Flipper and then do something about that, which is something I did. I was going to do a series and maybe down the road, but basically of why I don't like the sun and the beach and stuff like that. Maybe it'll switch to a summer thing. And the 2 planned episodes I had was one about Flipper, because basically I was going to be like, yeah, this is fucking stupid. Like, how many incidents can involve a dolphin? You know what I mean? Everything has to happen near the ocean. But number 2 is basically horror stories from cruise ships that people have told online. And it makes me think that like taking a Caribbean cruise sounds awful. Like, it just sounds like hell on earth. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't understand exactly how some of this stuff happens. It's like, a fist fight broke out at the buffet. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, if I was at the buffet and a fist fight broke out, I'd be like, okay, I'm going back to my room. And I think I'll just be there for the rest of the time then. Can you guys, maybe I would want to stick around long enough for the fight to be broken up so that I could understand what food they were fighting over and therefore avoid that food should it come up again. Does my work leave some nuggets behind? What? Maybe it doesn't serve the larger story to, leave everything in, or it would take too long to explain. You have to be okay with that. Yeah, fine with that. I don't give a shit. You don't deserve anything from me. God damn it. Okay. Notes from the pros, right in your voice. You, yes, you. Kelly McEvers, host of Embedded. My practical advice on writing, which I will scream from the rooftops, and everyone who's ever worked with me will roll their eyes and be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's saying this again, is just write the way you talk to your friends. Turns out that's not easy. I am such an annoying stickler that I won't say spoke to because I don't say that to my friends. I say talked to. Or for more tips on how to, I don't say tips. It's just not a word I say. Would you say to your friends, do you want some tips on how to fry this egg? No, I say advice because that's just what I say. If you say, now I agree with this so far, and I really agree with this part. If you say fire in the first sentence, in the second sentence, you think you have to change the word and say something else. You have to say the blaze because that's like the most newspapery thing ever. Who would talk that way? Like, oh, by the way, there was a fire in my house last night. The blaze was ... No, I would just say fire twice. Write how you talk. It's actually hard. I agree with this 100%. This is the best advice in this entire book. And I'll tell you, like, I have this distinct memory of being in like elementary school and, we had like a worksheet and it was like a dialogue writing worksheet, right? And there are different pieces of dialogue, but you had to use different words that mean said, like exclaimed or shouted or whatever. And I get the idea. It was like to improve your vocabulary and shit. But like, I hate that. I hate when people do that. I'm like, you can just write said over and over. You don't have to say exclaimed. And in fact, on the page, your characters should be doing things that tell us how they feel without the narrator having to say he exclaimed. So stupid. And I do agree, like, write how you talk. Or like, if you're just talking on a podcast, just talk how you talk. That's fine. It is kind of the shortcut to writing how you talk is like, or you could just talk the way you talk. I mean, they've got a whole list of, field equipment you need and whatever. And like, I think the advice in here is okay. To me, it's like, here's what you got to do, guys. Start cheap. Start as cheap as possible, which is very easy today. It's pretty easy to not spend a lot of money and have something that sounds pretty good. And then go from there. You know what I mean? Get like 50 episodes under your belt before you drop like $400 on some fancy mixer. Because you'll just have a bunch of stuff and nothing to do with the stuff. Okay, here are the 10 commandments of recording. Do you think I'm going to recording hell? I think I am. Thou shalt always get a minute of ambience. I do that sometimes because it helps reduce the noise later. Thou shalt keep the same mic placement when recording room tone. Sure. Thou shalt not walk on the end of sound bites, which is to say, shut up, let the interviewee talk, and don't fill up silences with yeah, right, or interesting. You'll need those silences when pulling things together. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I don't really do interview. I've done like one interview on this show ever. You know what I mean? Thou shalt always wear your headphones and keep them holy. I'm not wearing headphones right now. I probably should be. It would probably help, but I'm just not. I'm just not. Thou shalt shun the evil hums, fluorescents, computers, fridges. Okay, this is advice that, yeah, I'm like, fuck off, NPR. Because I'm like, so, yeah, a lot of us can't record in a literal recording studio. I don't have a recording studio in my home. I never will. You know what I mean? That's just not something I have. So it's like, there's going to be stuff happening because this is being recorded in the real world, you dipshit. Thou shalt not interview people with music playing in the background. Why would you ever do that? Okay. Thou shalt always have the person say their name for proper pronunciation. Yeah, all right. I mean, when you interview Jeff Strand, I feel like you could just do that. You know what the other thing is, though? You can always listen to other things, you know, like listen to other podcasts or this drives me fucking crazy because, okay, when I was like, maybe I'll get some people I want to interview on this podcast, I was trying to get, after I got Jeff Strand, I was like, maybe Chuck Klosterman would come on here because he does a lot of podcasts when he has a book come out. But like every time he's on another show, almost without fail, they call him Chuck Klosterman and it's Klosterman. And he went for a while correcting people and then stopped. And so when I was talking to his agent about whether or not he would come on the show, my big pitch was like, I'm a big fan. I've read all of his books. I have lots of questions for him. I've listened to lots of interviews. So I think I have some, you know, somewhat unique questions for him or maybe things that would keep him interested. Also, I know how to pronounce his name correctly. That was just kind of like a joke, but also to be like, I'm a fan. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. It's like when you see someone on late night and they have a book they're selling, and it's like, look, I know Jimmy Fallon doesn't read all these fucking books, right? Like, there's no fucking way. It wouldn't be reasonable to expect him to. And also, you know, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think you should have to read a book just because someone's a guest on your show, but at the same time, it's like, well, why bother then? You know what I mean? Who cares? Thou shalt check thy tape before thy departure from the scene. Why? What are you going to do? If your interview's completely fucked up, you're going to start over? Do it again? Thou shalt mic closely. And thou shalt get another minute of ambience just in case. Should I just be quiet for a minute? Just like let a minute go by here and just not say anything? Let's see. Here's from Sammy Yenigan, supervising editor of All Things Considered. Well. There's a really good Code Switch episode called The Explanatory Comma, which explores the idea of who are you speaking to and what do you need to explain to that audience. It came out of a conversation that hosts had about Tupac Shakur, the hip hop artist, and there were people writing in asking, can you explain to me who Tupac was? So there was always the tension. Do we alienate our listeners who know about this person by saying, hold on, this is who Tupac is? Or do we alienate the listener who doesn't know it by just sort of taking that for granted? That is explored in the piece. We were constantly balancing those two audiences and wanting to speak to both, I think. I mean, to some extent, you know, my advice for a podcast is like, okay, on the one hand, they're like, be unique, you know, check out and make sure there's nothing else doing what you're doing. And at the same time, it's like, but also don't forget you can't alienate people who don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm sorry, if you don't know who Tupac is, like, it's not 1954. Whatever device you're using to listen to a podcast, you can probably look up who Tupac is. There's probably half a chance that you've heard a Tupac song and you just didn't know it. But also, I mean, I'm like, I get it. He's been dead since I was in like fucking junior high school or something. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Tupac, that's not a famous enough guy. Maybe if you were talking about him during his Machiavelli phase. But I think you could just go for it. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, well, we're going to alienate people who don't know who he is. And it's like, yeah, well, if people don't know who Tupac is, how much do we have to tell people? You know what I mean? Like, why would they even be listening to whatever you're talking about anyway? Or, sometimes I like to think of it this way, like, do they need to know who Tupac was to understand what's going on? So in other words, if I say, Tupac did this thing, blah, 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 and it's like, you could stop me and say like, wait, who's Tupac? Or you could just shut up and listen. And by the time I get to the end, it'll probably be like, well, it doesn't particularly matter who Tupac was for you to understand the example. This is suggesting that you should make a listening session, like a focus group to react to content. Make it fun. Invite your podcasting peers. I don't have any peers. I'm peerless. Which, it's kind of like saying like I'm priceless, which is like, I'm beyond the concept of price, or I'm worthless. Hard to say. Encourage honesty, clarity, and kindness. No, I refuse to do that. If people don't react kindly to this show, I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Don't fucking tell me. That's fine. Just go about your day. Don't send the email. I don't care. I care. I just, I'm not going to do anything if you're like, it's not very good. I'm like, oh, you're right. What should I do? Put in hours of planning into this? Ask how it makes people feel. What's their takeaway thought, insight, memory, or emotion? I would be curious. That would be an amazing question to ask people after listening to this. What insight did you gain from listening to this? What brilliant insight have you now, gotten from? Oh my God. Oh, hey, this is Notes from the Pros. 2 hugely important points about podcast, quote, success. It's Guy Raz, creator of How I Built This with Guy Raz, co-creator of TED Radio Hour and Wow in the World. He's back. See, I didn't know who Guy Raz was, but it doesn't really matter, right? He's the host of this. West Coast rapper, Tupac Shakur. There you go. The first thing is, nobody should go into podcasting with the intention of getting rich. I get probably once a week a request from somebody, some of whom are well known, wanting to start a podcast and wanting my advice. And invariably, I will get a call back from that person 6 months later, and they'll say, I don't understand. I have 1.5 million Twitter followers or 1 million Instagram followers, but I'm only getting 2,000, 3,000 downloads a week on my podcast. Can you help me figure out why? Yeah. Okay, yeah, don't do it to get rich. That's like the Tom Spanbauer advice. The other really important thing is that a podcast should be seen as a part of the general overall ecosystem. If you really love a specific video game and want to create a podcast around it, is it connected to something else? Can you think of it as part of an ecosystem? Do you also have a YouTube channel? Do you have a blog? Can it also be a book that you'll write one day? Can you offer classes where you can teach people how to get better at the video game and maybe charge $5? Can you offer classes where you can teach people how to get better at the video game and maybe charge $5? Who are you, Guy Raz? Welcome to my video game class where I will teach you how to play Ninja Gaiden. I would take that class for $5. If they were like, if you take this class, you'll be able to beat Ninja Gaiden legitimately. That's worth $5 to me. If anyone's offering that class, you let me know. I have $5 for you. This last thing is about monetization. And it's like monetization level 1, lower effort. Donors thanked by name on your show. I thought about doing this. I've heard other things do this, and I've listened to podcasts where they're like, we'd like to thank all our donors, and they read all their names out loud. Mine wouldn't take very long. Existing services or products. Your podcast on work-life balance could funnel people toward your career coaching service. Oh yeah, so this could be like, I could put up a affiliate link to bookshop.org on my website so that you could get NPR's podcast startup guide. That certainly is something I could do. Bonus content that I have. helpfulsnowman.com/Patreon. No, patreon.com/helpfulsnow. Just go to Helpful Snowman. It's fucking right there at the top. Give episode access, ad-free access. Yeah, all of them are ad-free. Dipshit. I've heard that other services like will insert ads into, podcasts or whatever. If you're listening to this and there are just ads inserted, like, what are you doing? Like, you're making a huge mistake. Just get it from my website. Don't bother with that shit. Monetizing level 2 is medium effort. So far, I think I've only done low effort. Inside info. What is my record? You could tell people how the sausage gets made. Like, what does your recording space look like? Capture a typical day on location. Okay. I mean, it's depressing in here. It's cluttered. It's hideous. I spend most of my time here. The last 5 years, I've spent most of my days in this chair. High effort. Products and services. Live and in person. I did always think it would be very funny to do a live episode of this. I know lots of podcasts do live shows. I thought it would be very funny to do a live episode of this, but what I would want it to be is at a venue and then literally no one comes. It's sad if a couple people come, if there's 5-6 people there, that's sad. If there's absolutely no one, that's hilarious, right? I just imagine the people at the venue. And here's the best part. Nobody comes and I'm still recording it. And then, I get to do in the feed, it's here's the live episode. And it's, I make a joke or something and it's fucking silent. Maybe I get a little bit of time. I can interview the staff at the place and just be like, wow, have you ever had a failure this hard before? And it would just be so funny to imagine what they're saying. It's almost like an Andy Kaufman stunt, right? It's oh yeah, I'm still doing the show. Even though nobody came, I'm like, well, the show must go on. And then it's just record me talking to an empty theater. That's the ultimate madness, right? It would be even better if this was a live show every week that I recorded that no one came to. You know what I mean? That just never had anyone in the audience. And it's he comes every week. He does this. No one comes to it. And here we go again. That would be amazing. But I don't know. I don't know if that, I feel like somebody would show up, a family member or something. Someone would come, ruin the whole thing. All right. Well, that's NPR's podcast startup guide and sort of Pete's podcast startup guide. Here, I just want to tell you my philosophy on these kinds of things. I think my guide to starting up whatever it is you're doing. I mean, if it's a fucking business and you're going to throw your entire life savings into it, okay, don't do what I'm about to suggest. But anything else, just kind of do it. Find a low key way to get started. You know what I mean? A way, and by low key, I mostly mean don't spend a bunch of money at the beginning. That's a very tempting way to get into anything is well, I'm going to get into jogging, so I better buy some expensive shoes. Or and a belt with water on it and I don't know, some clothes and all this shit. And then you start jogging and then you're oh my God, I hate this. Or it would be if you wanted to start reading more and you're you know what the answer is to buy a bunch of first edition, super expensive books. And that will cause me to read more. And just start with the cheapest version that, is reasonably good. I remember I got a keyboard because I was I think maybe I want to learn how to play some music. I was I feel like I have room for this in my life, which I definitely don't. And it's like I was looking around and trying to figure out like what's a decent one, so I could learn, but also won't hate it. And everybody on like Reddit and stuff, oftentimes Reddit doesn't steer me wrong, but in this case it was, because they were like, well, you need to have a keyboard that has like, variable resistance levels, basically, so that it's like playing a piano. Like if you've ever played a piano, how hard you hit the keys kind of determines how loud it is. So you can, adjust the loudness or the sharpness of the note a little bit by hitting the key harder. And keyboards don't work like that. It's kind of the same tone, same volume, regardless of how hard you hit it, except for like super fancy keyboards. So they were like, well, you need to get this kind because that's like playing a piano. And every keyboard of that kind is like $500. You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't know. And they were like, you're not going to want to. I was seeing them say this to many other people over the years. And it's just like, well, if you start playing it and the keyboard sucks, you're not really going to enjoy it. So you're whatever. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I could get something that's like $100 and, dive in. And then if I really love it, I could invest more down the road. But if I don't really like it from the beginning, I don't think it's about the, key travel or whatever that's going to make the big difference. Or it's like if someone was like, I think I want to fuck around with like a fancy pen. You know what I mean? I'd be like, okay, well, I have some suggestions for you, but like none of them cost more than $25. Because I just don't think a pen that costs more than $25 is worth it. And like, get this one, fuck around with it. And if you like it, then, go nuts. You know what I mean? But plus you'll have a better idea of like where you want to spend the money and the effort. And I think that's like definitely how I feel about podcasting, is I think you just got to get in and start doing it. And that's how you'll find out whether or not you like it. And if you like it, then you'll be able to spend more time and money and effort on it. And if you don't like it, then fuck it. You're barely out anything. You got a little attachment for your phone and, it sits in a junk drawer forever. That's fine. You know what I mean? Aliens will find it 1,000 years from now when we're all gone and they explore our planet. And they're like, wow, these guys really made a lot of nonsense that they had. Like, look at all this stuff they had. What were they doing with all this? Wouldn't that be great? Like, we go to Mars and it's like, we did find signs of an ancient civilization there. And they just had all this crap that we're like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? They have their equivalent of, I don't know, minions. And it's like, we're like, are these gods they worshipped? Are they whatever? And it's like, oh, this was like a entertainment figure for kids that they just really liked. Cause they have like a big eye and a butt and they fart out of their butt and then they laugh. It's like, okay, yeah. You know what? This feels very human, which is weird because they're Martians that I'm chronicling. Is that a preview for next episode? The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury? You'll just have to wait and see. Next time.
You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where the